Hello and welcome to Dicebox, a tabletop role-playing podcast where we focus on playing full campaigns in less well-known systems. This week in episode 36, our Nobilis are left in a forest on the corpse of a god, in front of the corpse of a demigod, pondering their next move. Hello and welcome. I'm Adam, your friendly neighborhood game master, and joining me are...
Hey, I'm Drew, and I'll be playing Leorian guitar, Viscount of Tempo, experienced musician, decreasingly inexperienced demigod, aspiring stand-up cat.
Hi, I'm Robin, and I'll be playing Mavia, the furious queen, baronet of darkness, sacrificial pawn, and servant to the forge.
I'm Des, and I will be playing Ramnet, who is not necessarily the cause of all murders. Some. But I appear to be responsible for them.
Very good, thank you. So, before we get started, have we any stat growth? And we have a roll from Ramnet for bonus XP.
Let's see. Paraphor's there.
That'll do it.
I got your stat growth right here. I think I'm gonna outperform music from a 4 to a 5. That's got an expert die, but that's not affected by this particular expenditure.
D9. So that's going to be 5 experience, mortal experience for you.
Cool. And just for the listener, that means I still have 3 in the bank.
Excellent. Other expenditures.
I think I am going to up Fascinate to 2 plus a master die from 1 plus a master die for 3 XP.
3 XP, excellent.
I'll leave the lustrous one.
All right. With that, then, I think we will have our recap of our last session, courtesy of Leorian.
Well, we stood with the 2 nobles of Celiant, standing in what had recently turned out to be an eye socket. After some deliberation, Adeliova had Truth summon a third of their siblings. Tristan, a bit of a prickly prick, if I may. His silvern hand, it seemed, could take. So he set to work sussing out how to take from the dead overgod and give what he took to us. Uncomfortable with the vibes, if I'm perfectly honest. I did what I do, and I played some music. And everyone but Truth and Tristan and I danced, and Ramnet danced us down. And we fell into the dead brain of the dead god, where there was an absolute stillness. A stillness that Ramnet then murdered, as he apparently can do. And then we saw a recounting of some uncountable span of time. The whole history of this world leading up to, one assumes, the death of the thing in which we now found ourselves, and then we were back on it. Lissa and Ramnet used the sight on Tristan and found that his brightness was, and thus his defenses were, low. Lissa also asked how to keep Fury from being reincorporated into the great all-encompassing everything. The answer she heard was not to let Tristan touch her, which was, of course, what he planned to do, touch us all. Tristan had been the one who'd murdered Thoralda, it seems. That was the most recent murder in the Godswoods, but it wouldn't be for long. Lissa went all Mavia, and Ramnet made of her the murderer she already very much meant to be, and I made it all happen impossibly fast. She forced Tristan to take from himself unto death, and Ramnet commended that death to Dusk. I knew I liked Ramnet. Anyway, then Mavia called upon Mott, whose name I know I maybe shouldn't have said, but honestly, there are bigger things going on, okay? To wrest the shards from Tristan. And so then Mavia No sugarcoating this. She ate his still beating heart and took on the estates of Sacrifice and of the Forge. And then Tristan's siblings departed, and we were once again alone together.
And that is where we rejoined you. Thank you for that lovely recap. It is almost certainly sometime in the morning by now, though the light in the God's Woods has changed very little. In this clearing, a little more. There's some rosiness, but still relatively dim. You are arrayed about in various postures, the slightly sunken meadow made from the eye socket of the dead overgod, with the silver statue of Tristan clutching his own face, the pained rictus, and a hole in his ribs where his heart used to be. Mavia, in her new guise as a younger Lissa, is breathing heavily, grimacing just in front of what used to be Tristan. And Leorian and Romnet are elsewhere in the clearing not too far off, beholding the sights. That is where we rejoin the action.
I'm going to push Tristan into the eye socket.
Interesting. You are basically using your World Walker to try and put him through into the idioform of a brain case of the dead overgod?
Yeah.
Okay. You find yourself pushing against the ground. It's not that you can't take inanimate objects with you, it's that you can't seemingly send them ahead of you. You will need to go with this statue corpse if you want it to go anywhere.
I will do so.
Okay. We'll catch up with you in just a moment. So...
I'd say I was sorry, guys, but you know I'm not.
Well, you know. Don't get too excited. Leorian, Navia, Romnet approaches the silver statue that used to be Tristan and pushes on it to no avail, then maybe makes a sort of soft and unconscious tisking sound and then drops from sight with the statue. This time, alone. Any particular actions on the two of you's parts?
He's got
I don't
this.
notice that he's gone.
I say he's got this thing with unannounced departures. Maybe forgetting for a moment I'm talking to Mavia, not Lissa, and I turn to her.
Yeah.
My eyes slide towards you, but don't really seem to comprehend what you're saying. Or even fully that you're there.
You, my furious queen, if I may, you've got a new something on you, a new brightness, like forge fire when a forge explodes. Not lightless bright like you had before, something different.
I look down at my arms and I kind of look at my wrists and then my forearms. And I scream, and it's the same scream that you've heard from Mavia before, but without the added resonance of her usual fury. You realize that it's actually closer to a wail.
I don't suppose a hug would help.
I take a couple of steps back, eyes kind of wide and rolling, before I attempt to do a ghost miracle to bring back my shadow miracles, listen to me, my shadow tendrils and the shadows that usually whipped around my face.
Interesting. For a moment or two, they're there, but they don't stay. They dissipate quickly.
I yell out again and probably punch the nearest tree or item near me that is not Leorian. I should clarify.
You put a small indentation in a near tree, and it honestly it helps at least a little bit. It feels good, and you just breathe heavily for a moment.
It's a no on the hug, wait and see approach. I'll be over here.
Well, Ramnet, you fall once again into the darkness, overlooking what I am now going to cheekily refer to as the brain plane.
And I will try again to offer something up to the echo of the Overgod, namely, someone who would have sacrificed it.
You can leave Tristan's silvery corpse here. You just let go of it, it won't come with you, but there's nothing there to accept or reject your sacrifice.
Okay.
You've been through this song and dance enough to just recognize that, like, the teller window is shuttered.
Yeah, it's not really a matter of the form of the sacrifice or the offering, really.
Yeah, I mean, if this wasn't going to do it, nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll leave the silver statue to find its own way down to the brain.
Very well. And in moments you reemerge into a clearing to find Mavia sort of leaning on a closed fist on a tree, sort of seeming to regain her breath, and Leorian not quite perfectly opposite, but just like on the other side of the clearing, kind of leaning against a tree, maybe tuning his lute.
I will look between the two of them. Did I miss something?
I don't believe so. You were missed. The Furious Queen was simply working out some feelings, which I imagine are many after the proceedings. How was the brain?
There, metaphorically? It's got a statue in it now.
Better down there than up here, I suppose.
That was the theory, yes.
Is he, I mean, this is a dumb question, but is he dead? How, I mean, I know we're hard to kill, but that seemed, definitive.
I mean, I created a murder, and Mavia was good enough to accept the agency of it, despite my not asking first, for which I apologize. And so it was.
I hurt him before he could hurt me.
Oh, if you heard reproach or even disapproval, that was not intended. I simply am new here.
Protecting yourself is very nearly always acceptable. I only offer the qualification because it may be possible to think of times when it wouldn't be, but this wasn't one of them.
No, of course not. No, I mean, I honestly, I think I knew we could die. I just didn't. You know how even I don't know if you remember being mortal, but knowing you're gonna die, but that's different from knowing you're gonna die. I guess we're not gonna, but we could.
Leorian, You've been at this for 2 weeks?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not that much older at this than you.
Sure. Yeah, you're composed beyond your weeks, though.
Sure, I've been in the Obsidian Gods' employ, I suppose.
Sure, you were mortal. You were mortal then. I mean, not
right.
It was different, but it was the same, of course. So you know what I'll just stop talking now. I continue to tune my lute. I have probably tuned it to the point that when I absently strum it, the sound is hideous.
It seems like it needs it. I will hum a pitch that he can tune to.
I stalk across the clearing to both of them. Seemingly slightly regain my composure, though when I look at them, I'm not quite looking at them, as though I'm seeing something else, and I say, is there anything else to take from the god that once was?
Absent the silver hand, I don't know that there is anything to take that we have access to.
I nod, and I pray to Mott quietly, not out loud. Mm-hmm. But in silent prayer, I think to myself, oh, dark progenitor, is there anything else that needs to be done here?
Interesting. I'm going to have to make kind of a fate roll here. Because Mott is Mott.
Mott get a Mott.
So, Mott is cryptic at the best of times, and when talking remotely well outside the chancel, doesn't tend to be super verbose. The response that you get is, take what you can. Give it to me, not the betrayer.
As you wish.
Not being aware of this conversation, I am simultaneously checking in with Dusk. I reach out and say, so, I mean, there's a body, but there's no one home. Kind of nothing-y. Can we do something with that?
I will also try to reach out to Dusk if I can.
Okay. I'm gonna handle these,
of course,
separately, even though they're simultaneous. Mavia. The last thing that you get from Mott is after a long enough pause that you think that they're done. But it is... There is a heart.
Ooh!
All right.
Leorian. You check in with Dusk. And Dusk, sounding as though he is very far away, says, well, I'm not entirely sure what you may be able to do in your own power, but, metaphor is real powerful with this spirit stuff. So if you can set up some kind of link or claim or something metaphorically, we'll see.
Yeah.
And then,
real quick, while I got you, did you to get like a real power, like some real good bricks and mortar? There might have been a commendation coming your way.
What? And that's it. Run that. You are reaching out to Dusk. And you feel your fingers and toes start to grow cold and numb. Does this dissuade you?
No.
The numbness moves up your arms, and then very rapidly, your whole consciousness is wrapped up in dark. You don't think that you necessarily have Mott's full attention with this, but it would seem a safe bet that they have taken measures to keep you from using a back channel to someone that they clearly view as a traitor.
Okay.
I'm over here not quite realizing yet that the communication line has been closed, saying, I shall negate, thank you for your time.
You were doing a very good job of evoking a church that I might join.
Like I said, we're hiring.
Yeah.
It's obviously an aside. As the Hollyhock God is not diegetically present, to my knowledge so far. Okay.
And wouldn't that be a trip?
So, everyone has...
So 2
more or
successful
less,
communings.
Yeah, simultaneously attempted a communication. And at roughly the same tempo, everyone's attention sort of returns to the world outside themselves.
Do let me know when I am no longer numb.
As soon as you stop trying.
Okay.
Well, what's the consensus? Are we done here? I think we might not be done here.
We're not done here. There's more yet to find. We should make haste. I look to Romnut, not unaware of the degree of his presence in the current moment.
Sure.
And I say, brother, you were able to find the eyes. Can you find the rest of them?
The rest of the eyes? Or the rest of...
Them. Whoever
Okay.
came before.
Hey,
I need to know how their body is laid out in these woods.
Adam.
Yep.
Do the Godswoods just cover the head? If I were to, map out eyes, ears, mouth, and nose.
Well, if you assume a human number and placement of orifices of various kinds, then, yeah, this forest seems to really only cover, from the base of the skull upward.
I will convey that. Does it offer an orientation toward the rest of the body?
Not concretely. I mean, you are just looking at apertures here. You are
Oh,
not,
no, I know.
Yeah, perceiving anything like a 3D image or something. And we've already been over last session how it's not like the Godswoods are in the shape of a skull. There is some distortion going on here.
Yeah.
Some sort of metaphysical layer of screwiness. So, this is actually a pretty good time for a roll here. Why don't you give me you know what? Let's go with a sense plus lore. That's a fun one. That's 8 dice for you.
Okay, that was way kinder than I thought you were going to be. Okay, that is 3 5s.
Okay. So the chain of reasoning that you follow is, well, the thing is dead and has been dead for a long time and may or may not have ever actually had anything resembling a physical body. So there's not necessarily any reason to believe that all of the parts would be in one place. If there are other parts if there's a skull here in the Godswoods, it could be that there are other parts of the body scattered all over Mieleth.
I will convey
There's
that.
no guarantee that that's true, but
When you convey that to me, I look as aggrieved as I am disappointed, and briefly my eyes come into sharp focus and look at you before fading out as I do I'm going to just consult my domain and a divination, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And the question I want to ask is, where was the heart that once held fury? So this will probably be a major divination since I'm asking to cover a larger area of Mieleth.
Yeah,
And a specific
and a more
question.
specific piece of information, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
For now, I'm
With
not
no-
going to add any penetration for obvious reasons.
that will still be free.
Yeah.
So, you get a fairly specific sense of the direction that such a heart would lie in from where you are. And it is not directly down. It is down and sort of a northeasterly-ish direction. But if you were to follow the path directly, you would be fully underground in 10 steps. And you get the sense that it is very, very distant.
But is it, like, as distant as it is, do I still feel like it's down just beneath the Godswoods?
Well, at the angle that it is descending, you would be out of the Godswoods, maybe out of Taraxis entirely before you had gone all that far, all that big a percentage of the way to the final destination.
Oh.
It's much more lateral than vertical.
Interesting. Well, I suppose there's not much further to be done. So I would probably once again try to reach out to Mott. Just as a notification, since the other message came in at a delay, and say, it seems that the heart may not be in Chiraxis.
You have a sensation of wordless confirmation, but no specific feedback beyond that.
My Lady of Darkness, you may be able to inquire as to whether there is space around the heart in darkness.
In my current state, I cannot. And you realize that Mavie is crying a little bit.
Is there anything I can do to help?
No. And I try to cover myself in shadows again, I imagine to the same effect.
Yeah, as long as you're using a ghost miracle, it's the effect is similar. They're there for moments and then gone. Leorian. could I get from you a sense plus sight? That's going to be 4 dice for you.
Coming right up. Hold on. That
Also, what would I roll to see if Lissa were lying to me?
Okay, so the question was to decide if Mavia was lying to you would indeed be sense plus empathy. Yes.
All right. First, let me give you my roll here.
Yep. 3 4s for what that's worth.
No matches for me. High 10.
So, I guess, maybe you weren't rolling anything to lie. I don't,
It wasn't a conscious lie.
Sorry, I don't mean this to be like a big thing or anything. This is just...
No, it's not at all. I was bouncing an idea off of Adam, and then... Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, in terms of anything of consequence, you get the impression that there's no deceptive intent, though there may be information missing.
It's a polite sort of lie, okay.
Now, Leorian, you are not at all sure off the top of your head what time of day it actually is outside the God's Woods. They've gotten a little brighter and then kind of stopped getting brighter. Only while you are fiddling with your lute and this sort of conversation is going on among the pair of Mott's Nobilis, you notice that, no, there is actually a gradual brightening of the area around you, but it isn't coming from above you. No, it's actually coming from behind you.
I turn toward it, and I look not just with my eyes, but with the sight.
Ooh, that's fun. Okay. Let's see.
I guess I already rolled visuals. Can I also roll hearing? Is the brightness making a sound?
You can. So let's do that first.
Okay.
If you want to roll sense plus hearing.
Sounds good. I'm looking up how many dice that is. There's a master die involved.
That is going to be 7 plus a master die.
Taking the master die into account, that is 3 8s.
Okay. So, the other roll I need from you is a body plus endurance 4 dice.
Great. Good news.
Always a fun roll to be requested.
Not nothing. 2 3s.
All right. So you turn and you look and you focus your attention, you strain your ears. Now, you see a slowly growing, seemingly still somewhat distant on like a pedestrian scale, source of sort of like a shifting, molten, golden, silvery light through the trees. Its source appears to be very bright, but not especially close, again on sort of like a traveling on foot scale, and sort of occluded by the forest itself. As for sound, I mean, you can kind of like hear somebody striding, the rustle of clothes, footfalls, whooshing of, movement of things like arms and legs, and, all of that sort of modest background noise. Well, what if that was downright musical? What if you heard somebody moving casually in a way that formed a sort of tuneless song? It's very faint, but you can detect it. Looking with the sight, you see the apparitions between you and the source of this light. either fleeing or in some cases where you lose sight of them before they sort of like get sort of outshone by the light behind them. Maybe like dissolved or disappeared or something. Hard to tell. And then the light itself is also immensely bright in the sight. Well beyond what somebody with a spirit of 5 would have. And you recoil from it. It is physically very bright and spiritually sort of overwhelming, but you manage to sort of like steady yourself against a tree and like, you know, shake to clear your head. You sort of look down a little bit so you're not pointed directly toward it through the trees, and you regain your senses or retain your senses and your feet.
If I manage to say anything, it's along the line of, some other sun appears to be approaching.
I look in the general direction and hiss.
Out of curiosity, Adam, what would happen if miracle points were applied to my magic?
We would treat that actually as an aspect miracle. So using a level 1 aspect miracle would allow you to essentially max out your pool for the roll to do the magic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Filing that away for later notice. Or later use,
All
rather.
Right. Sure thing. So, Mavia hisses. The Orion alerts.
Orc.
The best boy. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?
Out of any of us, it is Leorian.
So yeah, those were initial reactions. This is, you know, moving from a little ways off at a relatively stately pace, but now everybody has taken notice of it. It is growing, coming closer.
I think perhaps none of us wish to be in that. Perhaps the Queen, least of all, ought we flee?
I'll call out who's there. And I will move away from the rest of y'all, so that you have a chance to flee if you decide to.
So Rumnut calls out who's there. Now, this is a pedestrian, detail-oriented question, but how loud are you calling out?
Enough to probably get the attention at the presumed distance.
All right, pretty loud. It is rendered seemingly even louder by the profound stillness and silence of Godswoods. And there's not exactly an echo or anything, but you do sort of get the sense.
No, that's in the apertures.
You call out. You get the sense of sound, traveling a fair distance. And there is a pause in the movement of the light through the trees, and then it resumes a little faster and a little more directly towards you. There is no immediate answer, although, Leorian, you will note that the sort of music of movement gets more pronounced immediately, and the tempo increases. You feel a mild sort of comparable to like a caffeine buzz from this.
Can I do a lesser divination to find out how long we have before it's upon us, measuring its tempo?
At this new speed, under a minute.
I convey this information in a caffeinated fashion.
I offer Mavia, refuge in darkness if she wishes it.
I take it.
Specifically, it's the spell Shadow Refuge, which oh no, it's caster only. Damn it!
Oh, the thought was there. No,
yeah.
the thought that counts.
That is very true in some systems of magic, yeah.
Unfortunately, Adam has spiked me with must use spells as literally written. None of this unknown armies nonsense.
It's a very different kind of magic system.
Can I make the darkness of the forest angry at this affront of an unnatural sun and rally it to protect me? Being that I am the darkness.
Yeah, so this is interesting because it's kind of two domain actions, but I think probably the darkness one is like a ghost miracle, since really what you're doing is creating the fury. So yeah, let's see how this goes. Go ahead and roll for me a command plus inspire, master die and another die.
2 10s.
Okay.
Starting off
the
strong.
The darkness of the forest rallies to you instantly. It whirls about you, and your success is honestly a little bit giddy. You feel both the fury and the darkness, sort of around you, and you revel in it for a moment, but it begins to be pushed away as the light gets closer. The darkness isn't really able to stand its ground before this light. Try as it might, angry as it might be, it is no match for the light coming toward you.
It's perhaps almost subconscious, but I take steps back as the darkness is driven back in kind.
Mm-hmm. Before long, you will end up out of the clearing and among the trees, and this helps somewhat. The darkness is not impervious to the light, but it is eroding more slowly now, and you can do very literal physical things like put a tree trunk between yourself and the light.
I'd probably do that, and if any of the others look back, they probably see this burling darkness and then 2 big eyes peering out from around the trunk.
I'll shadow dive towards the light.
Shadow dive towards the light. All right. So
it's my favorite song.
That is a 6 plus a master die roll. Intensity is 5. Duration is instant. And I just walk into a shadow and walk out of a shadow 100 paces closer.
Okay, so 1 shock damage to each limb, and you do more or less immediately emerge from the shadow patch. Okay, so if you haven't already, go ahead and roll your 6 plus a master die.
So intensity 5, is that the minimum, or is that what I have to beat?
My memory, my recollection, and what we're going to go with in the moment is the minimum. You can get a 5 or more. Okay.
Then I will go with 3 5s rather than pair of 8s or 7s, 8s, or 9s.
Okay. So you glance around, you dive into the shadow of a tree trunk cast by the light, and come out of another tree trunk shadow cast by the light, much closer to it. It is not harming you, but it could nevertheless be called searing.
I suspect, given my eyes, I have some trouble seeing.
Yes, but also it's more of an unevenness of clarity. More and more, you are able to perceive the form casting the light, and you are actually also now able to hear the musical movement that I was describing to Leorian not that long ago. There is a tall humanoid figure with sort of draped clothing, kind of suggested as it moves, striding rapidly, but not so rapidly as to seem hurried or undignified in the direction of the clearing, though the light and your peculiar eyesight do keep you from discerning details about this figure. If you're any judge of these sorts of things with the information that you have, this figure is walking with their head level with sort of like the bottom of the canopy here. This is probably a 12 or 14 foot tall person.
Giant woman.
I will greet them in high romantic outlaw charm formality.
Okay. So I'm assuming you wish to make a charm fascinate roll. There.
Indeed.
This is going to be 4 plus a master die.
Treble sixes.
Awesome. All right. So, do you want to give a crack at speaking this 666 greeting?
Greetings to you who have come unannounced to the God's Woods. May I ask with whom I have the pleasure of conversing?
The light and the figure stop. Feels like a pause, turning in your direction.
A caesura rather than a fermata?
Sorry?
A caesura rather than a fermata?
Quite. The light pulls back into the figure, growing painfully bright and sort of swirling some, and then cools off. Still there, but no longer interfering with vision. Almost more like a corona or a halo of light. And the figure standing there is large and sort of a figure of alien perfection. You can see a similarity in the construction of this figure and of Tristan. But this figure is much more of the ethereal than the physical. And sort of more so, where Tristan was a little bit monochrome. This is a figure of molten gold and silver hues, wearing draped cloths of shifting patterns. I try to avoid doing referential stuff where I can, but to get the specifics of the visual here, if you've seen animation where the cloth is rendered with a static backdrop that the characters being animated move over, this is sort of the effect that this actual three-dimensional figure in front of you has, and it is disorienting to say the least. And as the light sort of fades, you see sort of a visage of, as Robin had said, a giant woman with a very sort of inhumanly perfect aspect. She would be beautiful in a stern but not stark or severe kind of way. The expression on her face is one more of an authority on high, regarding a supplicant than of displeasure. There's nothing that could be called a smile, but nothing that could be called a frown. And the sort of flowing locks of her hair, about the time they reach her shoulders, simply dissolve into the nimbus of light around her. She looks in the direction of where you spoke and says, in a voice that is more or less the like platonic ideal of mellifluous honeyed. Who speaks to me, and do you know where my servant is?
I presume then that you are the Lady Celiand.
My question, please.
I am Rumnet, prophet and servant of the Obsidian God. And if you seek sacrifice, Tristan went into the eye socket.
I see.
Well, Tristan's body went into the eye socket.
Your candor is unexpected from a servant of that foul presence, but appreciated nonetheless. I am indeed the Lady Celiand, and I would know of the demise of sacrifice.
Murder and darkness forced him to sacrifice himself so that he would not sacrifice us.
I see.
I apologize
You then...
that it was a choice we had to make.
Your apology is noted, but
For
you
precisely
will
what it is
understand.
worth, of course.
Indeed.
I will say, also, for what it is worth, that although I am a Nobilis of Mott, well, service can be compelled.
Well, I know it. Proceed with me, servant of darkness. I would speak with your Familia Caelestis as well. Your candor has earned you much, but there is more that I wish to discover. And she begins to stride forward
Before
with that
we
odd
proceed,
musicality.
Lady, I do have a question of my own, if you would be willing.
Are you able to walk and talk?
Yes.
Very well. You may ask your question, though I do not promise an answer, much less a satisfactory one.
Naturally. That is the way of gods in my limited experience. If it were possible to destroy that which creates upward pressure upon you and yours, without somebody occupying that throne, how would you feel about it?
Your proposition is an interesting one that I will consider, but I pray you think on this. Given that shards which imperators give to their nobilis have proven to be frustratingly transferable, do you think that the abolition of a superior position would end the conflict? Because I have my doubts. It is at about this time that the two of you stride into the clearing. Now, we had established that Mavia was taking refuge behind the shadow of a tree trunk, and I would assume that you stay there, though the light from the time that Celiand resolved herself, into a mortally perceptible form is less cruel than it was. Leorian? Anything in particular that you have been doing in this interim?
Some portion of it has been spent in intolerable silence with Mavia, looking sidelong every few seconds. But then, when I can break the silence, saying, "Should we help him? Does he need help?"
Does not feel that way.
Yeah, you would know.
I'm also going to rule here, just to interject, that you won't necessarily have been able to hear what Romnet was saying. He, had to go within eyesight, but that could be a little ways with the spell. But you will have been able to hear what Celiand was saying pretty clearly.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. I have pointlessly and guiltily covered the eye socket with additional dirt with my foot.
Would that have given me the opportunity to reach out once again to Mott? Just constantly dialing the Mott phone here.
I mean, sure, you'd have had enough time.
Yeah. I would give notice that someone is approaching the deity formerly in charge of sacrifice, and implore Mott to reclaim me to Fermata.
Interesting. Let's see. You do not receive any particular response to this communique. You have no way of knowing whether it actually even got through to Mott.
It's worth noting from a metagame perspective that Fermata can be reached from any spot of perfect darkness.
Yeah, I'm out of miracle points, so I can't artificially... Would that be hypothetically a lesser creation? Yeah, I can't artificially do that right now.
Yes, it would be a lesser creation to get to perfect darkness.
If we need an emergency exit, we could get to Boar by giving something up. But that's a little vaguer. We may not have an easy way to do that, and by the nature of it, it involves, giving something up.
And I'm not sure that Mavia knows that necessarily.
I tense up because I have been, I avoided meeting Mott. This is something a little bit more unexpected, and I have been instructed not to dial the Dosk phone under any circumstances in the presence of one of these elder gods would be a more specific term, but the gods who are his elders.
Right. At around about that time, Romnet and Celiand emerge into the clearing. Celiand very calmly takes in the Orion and the tree behind which Mavia
I will place myself between that tree and Celiand.
She seems to note it in passing, but says nothing. Looking around the clearing, says, "So this is a god's corpse."
I suspect largely in metaphor.
Well, of course. We operate mostly in metaphor, except when we're very, very literal. It is beautiful in its own way. So, tell me, what made it necessary for sacrifice to be killed?
We would prefer to have not been sacrificed.
And this is what my servant was doing?
Given that he had already murdered our traveling companion and was seeking to put his taking hand upon us, it seemed the conclusion.
Hmm.
Feel free to make me roll lie if you want me to, because I am kind of spinning the truth here.
Are you, though?
I am stating very particular facts in a very particular fashion.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's diplomacy.
There isn't really going to be rules for lie of any kind.
Because she is in
against
charge of
the literal
truth.
goddess of
Yes,
truth.
I know. So this is why I'm stating particular truths in a particular order as well lawyers do.
Sure. Roll plausible deniability, please.
That's probably what, romantic outlaw charm would handle for me.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Cillian considers the clearing for another moment and then says, well, there is a certain poetry, perhaps, to sacrificing himself. The wandering gaze falls on the tree Navia is behind and says, what do you plan to do with the stolen shards that you in turn stole, child?
Realizing that my gig is up, I step from behind the tree as nobly as I can and stalk forward. And
until you make an action to actively pass me, I will just vaguely shift to keep myself between you and Cillian.
Yeah. I merely emerge into the clearing and say, I was not intent on keeping it.
And yet, it is beyond my reach at present. It belongs to your foul god now. War or no war, I am not reckless.
I merely wanted the other shard he had taken.
Cillian takes in your attire. Says, I can see how that might be. Well, in terms of diplomatic solutions, we appear to be at something of an impasse. Your master has never responded to overtures of peace or conversation, though her eyes track over to Leorian. You are something of a novelty, are you not?
I accept the compliment gladly. My lady.
Yes. You are new. Whom do you serve?
My imperator is none at all, and nothing to speak of.
She actually laughs. Laughs aloud at that. It is
Thanks,
sort of a heartbreaking sound. And says, oh, I see. You are a clever, sweet poet indeed. Well, addressing all three of you again. Have you a plan for the abolition of ultimate godhood? Sell me on your intent here.
It is my understanding from my estate and from my investigations Obviously, this is a step above my pay grade. That to create a chancel, one must commend a century of deaths. What if instead there were enchancelled all things into all things? Take it so that it is one seat that powers everything, and instead everyone gets a little bit of it. Everyone. That would make it both harder to turn, as it were, the shards possessed and passed out, and also make everyone a little bit beholden to everyone else. And thereby,
very pretty picture.
There might not be a complete lack of tension, a complete lack of war, mundane or divine, but everyone would be a good deal more connected.
A very pretty picture indeed. And this goes for the others as well? She asks, focusing mostly on Leorian.
If you'll forgive the brashness of youth, or the divine equivalent thereof, very much so.
I don't know that our boss, I will nod toward Mavia, has signed on to it so heartily as his boss.
Assuming that it works, it could lead to an end of the war of all against all, if not to the end of conflict among gods. Certainly there is an appeal, but in such a situation, your god, inhuman, unfeeling, callous, deceptive, would have as much a stake as any other, nodding toward Leorian, gesturing toward herself. Beauty, truth, sacrifice, almost everything in my portfolio can cause suffering. I make no pretense. But there are also things that are worth pursuing.
Everything used properly or improperly, depending on how one feels about suffering, can bring about suffering.
Indeed.
That's
Well
just a matter
said.
of tools, a matter of intent.
And so, I ask you, is my combination of nature and intent not perhaps preferable to a profusion of more or less equally valid, quietly and noisily competing alike natures and intents?
Given that the Overgod did not rule for forever, I don't think that there is anyone who could convince me, personally at least, that they, howsoever magnanimous or not, would be fit to fill a throne for only a time with no guarantee of who comes after.
If I may.
Anti-monarchist.
Yeah. I'm a churchman.
In a more...
If my flock is everyone, then I am beholden to them.
If I may put it somewhat more crudely, perhaps, beauty, truth, these cause suffering when they are pursued to the exclusion of all else. Most powers are such. It may be that to eliminate the most suffering, we must simply make it impossible for any one to rule over all.
This still leaves the problem, though. Even with all somehow enchancelled among all, that, however difficult it may be, shards are not fixed. Even an unshattered imperator, someone who has not taken a chancel, has not taken Nobilis, could, theoretically, be overwhelmed, say, by a cadre of their peers, and cannibalized. Why should we assume that this is not precisely the struggle that would immediately ensue? Rather than claiming a flag and bringing it back, so to speak, in order to become the overgod, one simply must eat all of one's peers.
It sounds much like the current situation. If the worst that could come of this,
exactly.
Well, sure, but if the, well, of course, and undoubtedly, but if the worst that could possibly come of the new world is that it resembles the old, perhaps that's a better argument against the state of things than against changing them.
And is that the worst possible outcome?
The worst possible outcome, depending on how you look at it, is that the throne is destroyed and no one can occupy it. Or that everything is destroyed and no one can occupy anything. Or that the world is not sufficiently changed and the war continues.
So you acknowledge the possibility that ending the contest may also end existence. Is this a risk you are willing to take? Surely it is better to exist in a state of strife among gods than to not exist.
I think that depends on who you are asking.
I'm asking you.
Yes.
The three of you, here, now.
For my part, I would rather risk a void on a general belief that existence will come about because if there is a void, there is still something. Even a nothing, I will nod at Leorian.
I will visibly not return the nod.
Is something in that it is named. It is observable if there is anything to observe, which obviously is not part of your hypothetical there, but nothings tend to become somethings. And then, if we fuck it up quite that badly, then there might yet come other chances to do precisely the same, or different.
If I,
Daughter of Darkness?
I was going to say, I've been giving sidelong glances to Mavia, as though it is definitely her turn to speak.
I'm dribbling, and it's not clear if I'm actually looking at the literal god across from me because my vision keeps fading in and out. My breathing is uneven. And I just met her. No, I have to survive. I have to get through this. I have to be stronger. I can't let this keep happening.
And you?
Well, if you'll permit me the most base response possible, I was mortal very recently, and my sister, who is still mortal, was a military woman, and once she got to dine with 3 generals of opposing armies. There was a détente, you see, and the topic turned to what would be the most certain thing to destroy all of creation, from a mortal perspective, that is, life ending as we know it, that sort of thing, right? Very piddling from a godly perspective, but bad if you're mortal, right? And I'll spare you the whole parable, but what they came to was that the only thing that would most assuredly end creation, the only thing that every person with power would be willing to burn down all of creation for, would be the possibility of ruling everything.
I see. Well, no one among my peers would fault me if I were to strike you all where you stood for your transgression against my servant. But I do not believe that would be in any of our best interests. I know better than to expect the obsidian god to respond to overtures of conversation or diplomacy, but if your master, young god, would like a conversation on neutral ground, she holds out a hand, and it has what appears to be a small oval of light in it, although small to her is still roughly the size of your hand, offering it to you. Says, all that your master must do is crush this, literally or otherwise, to let me know that he is ready to talk. If you others can get through to your master, then so much the better. And if you would like to converse on various matters without necessarily informing any particular entities who might be interested, well, I am open to seeing what can be done. Know that my approval is conditional. You have... I will not resort to euphemisms. You have transgressed against me. You have set back my influence upon the world. You have stolen from me. But I am able to recognize goodwill where it exists. And so, consider my clemency proof of my good intent.
Would it be possible for us also to convey the device you have handed, or a device such as you have handed Leorian, to the Obsidian God in the event that they may decide to set aside inscrutability for a time?
This may, it might be prudent for this to be 2 separate meetings.
Yes.
I understand. She holds out her hand up above you with a similar oval of light in it, and then sort of squeezes it until the light emanating between her fingers dims and then dies, and instead holds out a polished, darkish silver oval of somewhat smaller size that does not gleam in the light she casts, and offers it to Romnet. This shouldn't offend your god's sensibilities overmuch, if you wish to convey it to them.
I appreciate the consideration in that.
I take what she offered me and I say, it is of course not for me to accept your offer on my god's behalf, but I accept the offer of conveying the offer.
Yes, well, if you should ever wish, and I understand there would be reason to be hesitant, to visit my chancel, then all you must really do is direct your thoughts on it toward me, and if I am able to respond, I shall. I can offer conveyance and a guarantee of comfort for the duration of your stay, though conveying you back to your starting point is more difficult for me, so you may wish to be able to make travel arrangements of your own. In the meantime, I urge you to confer with your masters. I will not recuse myself from the ongoing conflict in the interim.
Please also convey my regards and regrets to Truth and Adliova.
It shall be done.
Thank you.
Ooh. I pull myself together enough to meet her eyes and ask, why did beauty smile? Why was I beauty?
I suspect that you will need to ask her that, child. But I think that you can also ask yourself and get almost as good an answer. Feel free to scrape what power you can from this place. Your abilities should let you craft metaphorical or sympathetic links to it, siphon off some power. I will continue searching for other parts, and perhaps that information, should I find any, can be shared as part of negotiations, should they occur. Be well, godlings.
And you?
She slightly inclines her head, and then sort of fades slowly from view, like a light slowly dimming, and then being extinguished. There isn't any sort of after image from her departure either. You are left once again in the clearing that is the eye socket of the skull of a dead god.
I mean, she mentioned that we might be able to scrape power from here. We have at our disposal tempo and darkness, and sacrifice and murder and fury and the forge.
I immediately, without responding to Ramna, do a greater divination of fury, asking how I can make fury more powerful and from this place, not in, but from this place.
And I will cast Brightwater Oracle.
Okay. Let's handle Mavia's first. You don't get a verbal answer, as is so often the case with these, especially when it's Mavia doing the asking. But you get sort of the image of like the embers of a fire being picked up with blacksmithing tongs and sort of put in an insulated box. You've actually seen this done. It's not a common way of keeping, like fire in your back pocket, so to speak. But it is efficient, especially over short distances. Only in sort of the image that you receive, the coals, right? The embers are, the sort of remnants of past fury. That you could load into yourself. The method is fuzzy, but intuitively, if you sort of could recreate, sort of something locally that echoed that original fury, if you could connect to it, in some, kind of symbolic fashion, then you might have access to it.
Interesting.
So, Brightwater Oracle requires bright light.
Yep. It's rapidly fading, but we had a divine source of it for a second there.
True. It is a 7-minute casting time, though.
Yep.
Do you have a plan for, it says, while casting, the bowl of water must be in bright light. Do you have a plan for keeping it in bright light?
I asked Leorian to, shine his mirror token down on it.
Yeah, I oblige.
This works like a charm. In fact, go ahead and roll your pool of 6 plus a master die.
That is 4 9s.
Woo!
Right. You looking into this bowl of water, inquiring about harvesting power from this place, you are shown an image of you reaching out to the various specters that you've seen floating around the forest and simply absorbing them. The mechanism isn't necessarily clear, but that's the image that you get, is using the sight to locate and touch along with some miraculous mechanism to absorb the specters in the Godswoods.
Okay.
Yeah, the only person who hasn't got any sort of direct clue about what they might be able to do here is Leorian, I think.
I think before I do anything, I ask the group. So we should probably just get it out on the table that I don't think everyone in this situation is going to end up friends.
Clearly not.
So I mean, are you calling dibs on the alliance, or what do we do?
I'll look to Mavia on this one.
Oh.
Renowned diplomat Mavia.
Yeah. Mavia looks at you.
You're the one.
Perks an eyebrow and shrugs.
You're the one who cares significantly more out of the two of us about our boss. You probably know this already about me.
I shrug again.
Okay, well, from another angle then, it seems like your boss and the fair and mellifluous and rather bright lady are not on good terms.
I think it is mostly a matter that our boss is averse to communication, and thus diplomacy.
That sounds really hard.
Yes.
Okay, well, it sounds like the opening move probably comes from Dosk. It's such a relief to say his name. From Dosk.
Probably.
I think I can take us to him.
Isn't
We might want to
there's-
try to, as it was suggested from upon high. I will nod to where the large woman's head had been. That we scrape from here what power we can.
Right. Of course. Sorry,
But then
got excited about the whole.
I would certainly be happy to accompany you back to Dosk.
Okay, sure.
With
Let's scrape.
With an inquiring glance toward Mavia.
She slightly bares her teeth and murmurs under her breath. It takes you a moment to really parse what she said, kind of like your brain has to review it, but she just says, "They left me."
Who?
They left me here.
Did you ask Mott to take you away?
Of course I did.
Fuck. Sorry. I don't know if you've experienced the degree to which I have heard from your other portion and from Dosk. Let me try that again. I don't know if you had gotten from the others the degree to which they had stated that our boss is careless with his playthings.
Playthings.
Or tools. Or toys. Unclear.
Whether I'm aware of it or not, I have taken 2 large steps backwards.
The beginning of another well starts to escape my lips, but I manage to swallow it back, and it seems to take some effort.
That's part of what drove the connection, I think, between Lissa and Dosk in particular. I was a bit along for the ride until recently. But if your parents will not take care of you, then you must grow up and take care of yourself, it seems. And so here we are.
Yes. I just have to take care of myself.
And if you would allow it, I would be happy to offer some amount of what I can to take care of you as well, assuming it's reciprocal.
I look a little taken aback at this. And after a moment of indecision, I bare my teeth slightly and say, "Why should I trust you?"
You are welcome to not trust me. That doesn't mean I can't still offer, and you can judge me based on my performance. You have no reason, really, to trust me, especially given what your present state seems to be. so I don't know how I can convince you. But it would be better to let my actions do such convincing as may be necessary than try to use words which don't seem to be your preferred mode of evidence.
I nod and murmur under my breath, Lysandra. Lysandra Crate. Mima would hate if I changed my name. That's why I called myself Mavia. Or it was their idea.
I would give you my full name, but I fear that the only part of it that I have kept is Ramnet, and I do not recall the remainder. So Ramnet, then, of Fermata.
We need to get the power from this place before someone else does.
Yes.
Ramnet of Fermata.
Have you an inclination of how to do it?
I describe exactly what I saw, of containing coals with tongs and a carrier.
And I will describe the vision I saw in the bowl of specifically consuming or snuffing the spirits. I suspect these
I look at Leorian.
I suspect these are similar sets of information, and yet
different.
Well, a bit lacking on the specifics.
I think all I have to contribute is that metaphor is powerful, which is something we already knew.
Do I see any lights like I normally do floating around?
Any lights like you normally do.
In terms of when Mavia is fully Mavying.
Nice.
In terms of sources of fury.
Mm-hmm.
For a long moment, you're sure that the answer is no. But squinting a bit and kind of really trying to perceive, use a little bit of physics here. Visible light is only one part of the spectrum. And there are waves below that are nevertheless felt. And so when you sort of broaden your gaze in terms of sort of like squinting to see, there's a very, very vague hint of like a heat haze rising from the ground and the trees.
Infrafury?
And the other plants all around you. It is diffuse. But even an informal, non-numerical internal calculation shows that all told, it could be quite vast.
I'll look around with the site to see if there are murders other than the one that we made.
Well, the one that you made is certainly the one that dominates your attention. But looking around, you can see that quite a number of the specters that are visible in the site, not all of them, but quite a lot of them are, well, I've been using the word echoes a lot, so I'll stick with it. They're echoes of a murder. They're not all murdered people. Some probably died in other ways. And you think that all of them died either here in the Godswoods or else their deaths were closely tied to the now deceased Overgod before the Godswoods even was a thing. but the ones that you can tell in the sight and with your estate were murdered probably make up a simple majority of the spirits.
And how many of them were tied more to the Overgod than to deaths that happened here?
Of the ones who were murdered, probably about half of those were directly tied to the Overgod. The rest would have been perhaps more incidental, or their murders happened in the God's Woods,
sure,
or using something from the God's Woods or something like that.
Let's see if this is easier than we think it is. And I use a divination of tempo to see if there is the echo of a heartbeat anywhere in these woods.
There is not. And it sort of stands to reason, because this isn't where the heart is. However, a slight modification to the divination of, rather than heartbeat, sort of pulse. It is extremely tenuous, extremely ancient, but there was once a tempo here, and I'm going to ask you actually to make a roll for me.
Sure.
Since you didn't have or use at least a mystical vector here. Give me a knowledge plus scrutinize for 3 dice in the pool.
Do that. 2 8s.
Nice.
Lovely. You sort of explore some possibilities as you are perceiving this, and you kind of take a critical look around you, thinking about like the tempo, both of this place as a former, at least sort of idea of a body of a god, and also as a forest. And you realize this is not that far from like the bay that Nema and Tiva are on. And that doesn't freeze over, but it gets cold by Taraxis' standards. But you look around the forest here, and it doesn't seem like it's ever any different. The undergrowth is non-existent. The forest floor, has some leaves on it, but nothing like the buildup of a deciduous cycle. And the flowers that you're looking at, it's not the season for flowers to be blooming at all. Much less with this little light and no evidence of pollinators. This place is in a sort of stasis. But it wasn't always, you don't think. And it may be beyond your ken to introduce tempo to it permanently throughout the whole forest. But you could do a little bit of symbolic resuscitation, perhaps, with the power you have remaining to you. If you wished to.
I convey this, and probably what I say is, I can feel a stillness, yet unmurdered, in this forest. And I think I can set it in motion again, if only for a time.
It seems we may have different scraping methods available to us from the sounds of things.
It may be easier to extract something from thawed ice to reach into water rather than stone.
Oh, of course.
All right. Well, I suppose, let me see. What would this be? Would this be a lesser creation of tempo?
That's going to be, I think, with what the miracle points in your character sheet look like, all that you can reach. You could do a greater, major creation of tempo had your points.
Right.
And that would
but I
have
haven't.
more of an effect.
Yeah.
But yes, you haven't the points.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to right of the last trump away some stuff, and I'm going to do a lesser creation of tempo on the forest. I'm going to try to negate the stasis, if I think of it in Doscally terms, or to make things move again, if I'm thinking purely in terms of tempo.
You feel at first your miracle press up against the ambient octoritas of the forest, and then you feel that octoritas give way, part, as though a curtain or the hanging branches of a weeping willow before your miracle, and you feel your miracle sink into the soil around you and into the trees and into the flowers. And at first, it's not clear that anything has happened. You feel a light breeze, just for a moment, pass through the clearing, causing, well, the dregs of some sunlight to dapple a little bit on the flowers below. They sparkle and wink, metallic petals. And then you hear a single cricket. Just a moment. And you feel the power diffuse further into the landscape around you. And very, very infinitesimally, this part of the forest is returned to time. You're not sure precisely how long it will last. But you don't have too long to think about that either. Because having done so, power flows into you from the forest, from beneath your feet, from the very air around you. You have a choice. You can refill all of your miracle points and add 1 to each meter, like temporarily, like the temporary miracle points, not raise your maximum. Or you can raise any stat by 1 on your divine attribute sheet.
It's a tough decision because I'm pretty tapped out on miracle points, and it's not clear when or if we're going to get to rest up before shit gets real. So yeah, I think I'm going to go for the topping off option.
Okay. So yeah, that's going to be 6 realm miracle points, 8 domain miracle points, and 6 aspect miracle points, plus 1 spirit.
So I do now have 6 in spirit, if you count the temporary one.
Yes.
Cool.
Actually, no, you're going to have 7. Sorry,
I
didn't see the underlying 6. Yeah,
Gotcha,
so you'll receive 2 spirit.
Understood. Oh yeah, I didn't highlight that the right way, so that's on me, dear listener.
Max plus 1 in each of those. So, for a moment, to outside observation, after this breeze and this cricket, Leorian sort of draws up, in sort of a stiff, erect posture, and then sort of sighs a little bit out and looks not physically rejuvenated, but just more vital in some way. You may even be able to feel just the flow of power. And Leorian, you don't catch all the power flowing through you. You actually feel a portion of it sort of fill you, and then once you are full, proceed past you to Dosk. It's hard to measure what flows through you, but it's not inconsiderable.
I give it gladly. I exhale, and I feel like music. I can confirm that it's possible to scrape, and it feels good.
So, metaphorically speaking, the point of this all is to increase our domain's presence, or...
I think if we can express us upon this place, if we can exercise our will and activate with life or with motion what is dead and what is still, then there's something in it for us and also something in it for the bosses. I look at Mavia when I say the bosses.
I am going to try to stoke that heat haze then, thinking back to the metaphor of coals. And I want to do this by creating my own fury, envisioning myself as the tongs.
Very good. So, you are creating fury, your own fury, in the environment around you.
Yeah, I'm projecting all the fury that is swirling around within me right now with no place to go into the environment to stoke the heat haze.
All right, so as a lesser creation here, it is relatively local, but still very effective. You channel it out, and you actually, best way I can describe it is you feel a dissonance, like you are singing a note that is a little bit off from the note echoing through the God's Woods.
Can I try to mimic the note?
You can. You cast about inside yourself for a fury that resonates with the fury around you. It may not be matching the pitch exactly, but you can at least harmonize.
And I recall it being some sort of loss or grief, like a tinge of sorrow from past divinations.
Yeah, the specific word that I used was despair.
Yes.
And you fiddle with the dial, as it were, and there are flavors of rage within you to explore here. You start... Go ahead.
I was going to say, despair is going to cause me to dig a little deeper into myself.
And you dig through some layers. You have sort of the generalized fury of a young person mistreated by their environment, which seems like the world is set against them. That clangs some. You go deeper. You have the fury of frustration at trying to cast about for a place and failing to find one. And that gets closer.
I drudge up the feeling of despair at being far too big for a world that tries to fit me into a smaller mold through whatever means necessary.
And that is closer still. You don't move past that. You simply start exploring the feeling. And what you find resonates best is anger at isolation. Feeling as though you are alone and that there is nothing that you can do about it and that it is unfair that you are alone. And that harmonizes perfectly with the rage around you, dim as the echo might be. And suddenly you have your tongs. You have the bridge to the environment around you. And you have the same choice. as Leorian had. You can give yourself a refill +1 on all of your miracle point meters, or you can increase any stat line by 1. Excepting domain because it's maxed out.
Yeah. I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here. Because I did this with one of my shards. So to be perfectly transparent, my plan is to refill and then repeat again with darkness.
Go ahead and refill your meters.
Okay.
And we'll see if...
And then I add 1 extra to each? Is that what it was?
So yeah, max +1. Yeah. So, we are going to circle back to you with darkness in just a moment. Ramna? Are you making any particular attempt?
I would like to call the murdered spirits whose deaths related to the Overgod all to me, and do... Is destruction... What level is lesser destruction?
5.
Damn. Okay. I will spend my last 2 points on a lesser destruction of murder to invite their deaths into me, so that they no longer have to bear the burden of having been murdered.
Okay. So, you... Let's see.
I'm right a loss trumping my last 2 fucking miracle points here.
You can call them to you with sort of a mild lesser creation of murder. You're not creating a new murder. You're just sort of like instantiating like a feeling around you that draws them. And you wait for a decent interval as dozens and dozens of these spirits sort of congregate on you. They look kind of through you, though they are looking in your direction. They don't seem to be able to focus on you specifically, but they have come to the place that you have called them to, and you channel the last of your power into a lesser destruction. And so I'm going to read the language here from the rulebook about what a lesser destruction of domain does. It says, hurt, destroy, or remove property. And so what you essentially do here is you remove the property of the spirits that keep them here. Remove the victim of the murder. And you do this in a localized area, localized destruction of murder victims. And they flow visually, if you're looking at them with the sight, and anyone else is looking at them with the sight, they'd see the same thing into you. Sort of a pale silvery mist, and you feel it fill you, and you feel it pass through you once you are full. To Mott, you have the same choice. You can replenish your miracle points up to max +1, or you can increase an attribute by 1.
Can we instead discuss that gift?
We can.
Beautiful.
Let's say that you should shoot for a cost of 4, mildly negotiable.
Sure.
All right. Would you like to explain for the listeners' benefit what you are aiming to do with this?
So, for those who have encountered Hogfather, murder doesn't really work squarely on things other than people, or possibly crows. So in order to extinguish an abstraction, you have to come at it slantwise. And my hoped-for gift is functionally a greater divination of murder that would allow me to discern, for whatsoever I'm looking at, how to murder it.
So yeah, you can feel the power that pools in you taking a shape, but it has not manifested yet. So everybody has gleaned some power from this place, but maybe may not be done. How are you attempting to deploy darkness here?
So actually, I want to do a little bit of table talk.
Sure.
I have a couple of options in mind because I don't have the grasp on how darkness operates or does not within this place that seems perpetually dark as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to do a miracle point to do a divination to better my odds. Or I could do a gambit on sacrifice under the assumption that the overgod, in their despair, distributed themselves. Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
Sacrifice?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that'll bring me up to 4 for a lesser creation directed towards what remains to echo the sacrifice that occurred here.
Yeah, there's already a sacrifice to work from metaphorically here.
Yeah.
So
like
you could be working
scenario.
with sympathetic ties, made stronger by the fact that I've tossed Tristan into the eyes. You're welcome.
I'll do that thing. So that'll be...
May I make a suggestion?
Yes. Of course.
Lesser preservations are level 3. So if you can think of a way to use a preservation to interact with sacrifice here, it might be worth your while.
Okay. I like where your head's at. So let this place become, however briefly, a memorial to the sacrifice of the former overgod and their despair that as of yet has been unfelt for ages.
You draw power into yourself, focusing it on the shard of sacrifice, and you angle it at preserving both the sort of memory and the not exactly like honor, but the purpose of this sacrifice, and you feel that you have hit a bullseye here. If I may cast back to Romnet's divination of biggest murder.
It wasn't murder, it was suicide.
It was a self-destruction. And it was the biggest self-destruction that could possibly exist. And it was in some ways selfish, but in other ways it was selfless. Both, of course, within the purview of sacrifice. And you feel the enormity of the event present before you. You actually fall to your knees, although you're not aware of it until you sort of come back to yourself. As a full understanding of what exactly transpired here passes through you. So I'm once again going to give you an option of how this goes, and whatever power remains passes along to Mott, just as it did before. You can permanently increase your miracle point pools by 1 and exceed them by 1 temporarily. You can add 1 stat point to anything other than your primary domain because it is already maxed out. Or you can add 2 stat points to sacrifice and cement it as yours.
Oh. I think there's a
Conversation.
It's not what... Oh, that's an interesting choice, and I'm having to think through it. So I guess I should think out loud, because it would be beneficial to be able to do lesser divinations, but anything beyond that would still require miracle points. And my angle here initially was to be able to bolster my spirit without expending divine XP to increase one of my domains. And I think that now that I say it out loud, I think I'm going to stick with that trajectory. Because I don't think Mavia is especially keen on sacrifice, understanding it as she does.
Certainly. Better now than she ever has.
Yeah.
Yeah, so go ahead and increase your spirit to 3. And when you sort of return to your embodied senses, you are on your knees, and it would be imprecise to say that you are weeping, but there are tears on your face.
Is there a way with some of the latent power before it slips past me to Mott to sacrifice onto Romnet?
Here's what you can do. You can let the shard go, and where it ends up, it ends up.
How do you feel about that, Dennis?
I mean, I am completely spent on miracle points, so I have nothing to catch it with.
Okay.
But
I will not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to relinquish it, because at least it's become clear that it's an efficient or effective bargaining chip.
Fair enough. And I feel comfortable saying that that is not necessarily your one and only opportunity to do something with the extra shards that you have found yourself in possession of. It will depend a lot on player decisions, what opportunities may or may not arise, but it is still a possibility. This was not necessarily closing it off. So, rest of the power passes from you to Mott. And thanks to Leorian's miracle, there is a half a measure of birdsong from the branches directly above the clearing, and the light through the canopy brightens a bit. But this only throws it into more stark contrast when darkness begins to billow out around the feet of Romnet and of Mavia. It does not take a genius to surmise that you are being called back to Fermata.
I'll wave at Leorian.
Leorian, you can accompany them if you grab onto a hand or an arm or something. Yeah, if you move toward me,
I'll hold out my hand, the hand I'm currently waving.
Well, quick table talk then. Do we split the party, or do we stick together? Because we do have our own diplomacies to take care of. I'm going to grab your hand. This was not a coerced decision. Certainly not. From a divine source.
I merely made pleas and suggestions.
It takes a hard-hearted demigod to ignore the pleas of a god.
Go west. Love the GM.
I grab your hand that you have offered, and
darkness billows up in the clearing, taking you to a familiar plaza. Emptier now than the last time you were here, though not empty by any stretch. The Lightward are no longer encamped here. It's back to business as usual. It is festooned still in silvery flowers, and the statue in the plaza is of Mavia in her current form and Romnet standing back to back. Mavia has a heart in one hand held to her mouth, teeth in it, and a piece of leg in the other hand, bone protruding from a shin that doesn't quite reach the knee in the other hand. Romnet currently has his teeth buried in the meat of a forearm held in one hand, the other arm up to the shoulder held in the other hand. They are not evincing expressions of savagery, though, but rather pleasant smiles.
Well, that's awkward.
There's a brief stir among the passers-by as you materialize in the plaza. Looking up, you see that the sky in Fermata, having changed before, is a little bit more defined now. And there is an almost but not quite impenetrable latticework of branches covering the entire city. What before would have been merest pinpricks of light out in the darkness are now those very, very small openings through which light enters the city through the branches. You are, for better and for worse, home for now. And that's where we'll end our session. Everybody can take 1 mortal XP. We'll hold off on doing 2 divine XP in a row. You guys got all a bunch of spirit, a bunch of miracle points and stuff this time. So,
and I am completely tapped.
Indeed, we will, reveal the precise mechanics of your new gift. I suspect next time.
Seems likely.
It will, I'm sure, come up in play. So, that concludes this session of Dice Punks. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I do hope that our players and listeners enjoyed it. I certainly did. And I hope that you'll all join us again next time. If you're hearing us now, you probably know where to listen to this, but we can be found in almost any place one can listen to podcasts, as well as on the wider web at dicepunks.com and on Twitter as @dicepunks. With that, I think we're ready to say farewell. Say goodbye to the kind folks at home, players.
Thanks for listening, and I should probably hide this super bright token I have. I should find a coat pocket or something. Excuse me.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and remember to not let your despair define you. It is an emotion, and it is not you.
Thanks for listening, folks. And when faced with choices about what to do with stolen power, don't do as I did. Make good decisions rather than interesting ones.
And as the poet once said, I hear a cry alone in the dark, and I search from whence it came. I find the cry is coming from me, and it blows my pride away. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in, and stick around through the admin stuff for a really stellar Leorians Live. The songs in this episode, Theme of the Dice Punks and its acoustic version, were written and recorded by the Viscount of Tempo in his element, Drew. Cover art is by Joanne, who has appeared on the podcast now and again. Check out her work around the internet where she goes by Anything So's. Site design and graphics for dicepunks.com are by Robin, the player behind Mavia, the Nobilis of Darkness, Fury, and Sacrifice. Rain and the one-roll engine it runs on were created by Greg Stolze, whose work can be found in a lot of cool places, but start at gregstolze.com. Nobilis was created by Jenna Catherine Moran, who can be found alongside a lot of her other work at afarandsunlessland.wordpress.com. Links to both systems and authors can be found on the Punk Grimoire section of our website, dicepunks.com. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, well, that's reward enough on its own, but if you're so inclined, you can help us out by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to us, telling your friends you think would like us to give us a listen, and even by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dicepunks. We have fun rewards available to backers, including a patron-only Discord, and access to the Dice Peaks After Show for episodes 1 and following. Regardless, we hope you'll tune in again, and until then, remember, subtlety is for cowards.
My entourage might be the greatest lootist who ever lived or looted. I'm biased, but I'm also right. She inherited a loot from her mother, my grandmother, but skilled as she was, she could never quite make it sound right. Or more exactly, however it sounded, it never felt right in her hands. She would make mistakes when she played it. The kinds of mistakes that only another musician would notice, and that even then were carried off with grace, but that would vex her for days on end. And then occasionally thereafter, it would keep her awake as she was trying to go to sleep. Now, mine is a family of musicians, a fine one at that, if I may. But this loot, easily the most famous member of our family. It had been passed down 3 or 4 generations. Lovers of music would come to see it and to hear it, to tell the story of having been in its presence and having heard it worked. So Aunt Haraj couldn't simply be rid of the thing. More than that, as long as it was hers, she couldn't play another lute, not in public. Not even if some other instrument would suit her better, serve her better, let her sleep better at night. She'd leave the thing leaning against a sofa in some side room of her house, a position unworthy of its pedigree, a small private rebellion. But that meant that her nephew had more access to it than he might have had otherwise. This legendary lute was the first he ever plucked at the age of 4 or 5. Aunt Haraj knew. A part of her hoped that I would damage the lute beyond repair, though the greater part of her knew the anger that would bring down, justified or not, on a child, so she kept an eye until she saw the reverence with which I treated the thing. It amused her and annoyed her and made her feel a little more tender toward her family. That much more at peace with the past, that much more hopeful about the future. So it wasn't just my potential, but it also wasn't just her desire to be rid of a burden when she said, "Keep it," as I set it down one day. When I looked at her, not quite believing, she said, "Yes, forever." I believed even less then, looking back and forth from her to the lute, sure this was an adult about to teach a child some harsh lesson or other about life. But she just smiled and shrugged and placed my hand gently on the neck of the instrument, now mine. "You and the damn thing just seem to make sense to each other," she said. "See if you can use it to make sense of things." No one was happy about the lute leaving town when I did, except, of course, for Aunt Haraj. The more discerning listeners could hear the difference. They could hear Aunt Haraj playing with a new comfort, a new confidence. The ones who were less discerning listeners, but who were like to bring her trinkets and notes and cut flowers after she played, they couldn't hear the difference, but they could see that the dark circles had disappeared from under her eyes. And as for me, I've tried to make sense of things. I really have. It was the first thing anyone ever asked me to do. I mean, the first thing that mattered. It's why I can't let things or people go. Why I think that we can really only make sense of things together. Did I do this right, Dusk?